Kaboom. Oh no. I was sound asleep when, suddenly, I heard a loud explosion. What the hell's going on? The explosion sounded too real. Something clicked into my head. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. We're under attack. Shit, what do we do? What is it? They're shooting right at us. Stay away from the window. Waking up in a hazy daze, I frantically scrambled to undo my seatbelt, ready to duck under cover. The pressure cleaner would have to be sacrificed. I yanked it up from underneath the console and prepared to scramble underneath. What's shooting at us? How should I know? But they're out there. Bam! Ah! I winced, shrinking into my duck and cover position. This was an emergency. The severity of the situation didn't seem to affect Budapest as she simply stared out the window, curiously. After a few moments, she blinked. Oh. The hell are you doing? If they see you, they'll know there are people in here to look. No. There's no one out there, just... Illyrion? It's the console. I was playing a song. What? Nani? I lowered my arms to poke out my head out from my safe cubbyhole. As I calmed my swiftly beating heart, I could hear some kind of orchestral song. It was at a feverish pace, a poor recording. 1812 Overture. Tchaikovsky. I don't know how to say that. Tchaikovsky? I wanted to give it a listen. So you just turn on a song the entire time? Yes, sir. Heh. That's funny. I tried to nonchalantly play my idiocy off, but she wasn't having none of that. You're blushing. I am not. That's just me catching my breath. I lied coolly before pulling myself out of my makeshift bomb shelter and back onto my seat. Alright, Teach, what is it this time? She only stared at me for a few seconds, dumbstruck. I guess my act was convincing. After a pause, she giggled, her cheeks turning a shade of red. Well, let's see what the records have to say about this one. It's really fascinating. They actually use real older cannons as part of the instruments. Oh, I've heard of that actually, where in orchestral music they actually use experimented with a bunch of different kinds of sounds, and cannons was one of them, I believe. Yeah, I heard. Oh, it's from a war. The smile from her face fell as she continued to read. A commemorative piece celebrating the defense of Russian sovereignty against an encroaching, militarily superior Napoleonic Empire in 1812. Hello. According to this, the Russians had used scorched earth tactics, burning their cities and farmlands as the Russian armies and civilians retreated. The French overextended their lines and encountered an impasse. Deprived of food and supplies, under constant siege by Russian Cossacks, and suffering under the harsh Russian winter, they ultimately retreated. This overture was inspired by the Battle of Borodino. Borodino? I don't know. The largest and bloodiest conflict in the war. She read the words quietly, hesitantly. It wasn't a pleasant subject to think about. I've figured you would have read plenty about war by now. Honestly, I've been avoiding the subject. It's been pretty difficult to avoid, but you were curious, so... Ah, damn it. This was my fault, wasn't it? I turned my head aside. In the corner of my eye, I see her hand rise to her chest, clutching the fabric of her dress. It sounded so heroic and optimistic, but so many had to die. Cold, hungry, and sick. It sounds miserable. I think I'm done reading this. She raised a slender hand to wave the display away. It dissipated in an instant before silently slouching back into her seat. What's up? You're usually not so down like this. They had the casualties numbers on there. I had a bad feeling well up and I didn't want to look anymore. That was all. There were so many dead. I couldn't really think about it any longer. And when I think about all that misery, it's just... I don't think it's something to celebrate. So a lot of men died then, right? She nodded silently, looking aside at me. I think... it might be something else. I might have been a send-off to the men that went out. I mean, they had homes and families to protect. They probably believed that they had to do it to protect them. I mean, it can't be all about killing the other guy, right? They had their reasons and... well, there's always something worth protecting, and sometimes you have to put your own neck on the line to keep it safe. Moral relativity in war. Is that the truth then? Her curious eyes turned to me, expecting some kind of answer I really could have claimed to have. I would hope that's the answer. Hard to say either way, but... Going over these old texts, I found there are many truths in the universe. I think that's the one I can put my faith behind. Thank you for sharing. Well, I guess this AI is learning about humanity. She flashed that delicate, tiny little smile at me appreciatively. I smiled back, happy to get her out of her funk. A silence fell upon the cockpit, which was fine. I was happy to drop that topic. It occurred to me that I hadn't really looked outside the front of the cockpit in a while. Sure, it was hard to ignore, but I hadn't done any real stargazing in a few weeks. I turned my attention ahead to the stars, drifting off in the far distance. Bright stars, countless worlds, each one possibly abounding with form of life. The expanse of space is terrifying, but at the same time, wonderful. A little while later, Budapest accosted me with a very unusual, very interesting question. Illyrian? Yeah? I've been studying the human concept of the afterlife, you see. Oh boy. It's very fascinating to see what different cultures and races around the human world thought about what came after death. To experience the struggle that mankind felt as it fought against death, grappled with the concept of the end, how they dealt with that huge, looming demonic shadow that was mortality, that hung over them in darkness. I wanted to know what you think about the afterlife, Illyrian. Well, I'm assuming Budapest, well, she's an AI. Will she ever die? So, will she... well, I don't know. That's what she's asking, I guess. I'm not entirely sure myself. This is a very sudden question, and I don't spend my day-to-day life thinking about mortality. Well, we smiled in unison. Would you like to know what I would want in an afterlife? Sure. She sighed, looking off elsewhere for a moment before directing her gaze back to me, an indeterminate look in her eyes. To be honest, I don't want anything. What do you mean? I just want to sleep forever. Sleep. She nodded, continuing her stare. I'd admit this was a rather strange situation, but she had a strange sort of sincerity that put me right at ease, even when I was several hundred steps outside my comfort zone. It's a concept that's foreign to me, but I like to experience it. My breath caught. I knew she could sense my discomfort, whether driven by stubbornness or pure curiosity, I didn't know. What is it like, Ilarion? Sleep. Well... To be perfectly honest, I really didn't know how to answer in a way that would make sense for her. It's like, it's relaxing. Imagine losing all your inputs for a long period of time. It's like that. Sounds scary. It's a time where you don't have to worry, or even do anything. Then when you wake up, freshen for a new day. I looked past her, back out into star-cluttered space, trying to ascertain my next sentence. It was difficult. That sounds better, but... She trailed off, both of us already knowing what topic was next. You want to know how it feels to dream? She nodded vigorously, a glint seeming to enter her non-corporeal eyes. It was stimulating, to be sure, as if I stood a chance against her seemingly omnipresent thirst for knowledge. Well, imagine an infinite numerous places, an ending amount of different people, an indeterminable range of situations. She looks surprised. Like, wow! Whatever the mind can think of. Exactly, it's different every time. Sometimes you can even bring people who you've met into the dream. Her eyes were wide, and I could tell she was absorbing all of it. Really? Yeah, your mind is open to everything around you while you sleep. So I could dream that we're both on a beach right now. You sure could. Well, I mean, not everyone can have dreams so vivid, and not everyone, remembers their dreams. I guess, if you can lucid dream, then maybe. Her eyes unfocused once more as she seemed to mull this over. I felt a strange, fuzzy feeling to show her something so innate to us, yet so unique and special to her. If only we hadn't met under such dire conditions. Distracted by my thoughts, I couldn't hold back a yawn that suddenly emerged from within. Instantly, her semi-translucent eyes darted right back toward me. Tired? I think so. I leaned back in my chair, device auto-reclining for my benefit. Folding my arms, I prepared myself for another bout of sleeping aboard the silent, drifting cockpit. Directing my eyes toward my companion, I noticed she'd harbored a very distinct look. She seemed unsure of herself. Is something the matter? What? No. I was just wondering if you could do something for me. What is it? I was wondering if I could monitor your vitals as you slept. Her eyes seemed to narrow, as if she realizes that her requesting this was a long shot. And what purpose would that serve? Well, when you dream, I might be able to experience it alongside with you. Sure, I just hope there aren't any needles involved. She smiled, both enthused at my acceptance and amused by my interpreted fear. No, I assure you, it isn't invasive. A small compartment opened on the dashboard. Near the right side, a small device appeared, complete with a wired electronic patch that looked like it was supposed to be stuck to skin. Well, there it is. Just stick it near one of your veins, it'll do the rest. I grabbed the device, rolling my right cuff down. Carefully, I attached it an inch or so down my elbow, and I quickly sealed to my skin. Simple. Off to bed I go. I sighed softly and closed my eyes. Good night, Ilarion. I took a deep breath. Good night. And with that, I slipped away to my own world, silently wondering if Budapest would come along with me. Slowly, gently, I slowed off the coil of sleep. I opened my eyes and stretched and noticed, for once, everything was silent. And, what day was it again? We must have been on the last leg of our journey by then. I thought the very notion would have made me restless, eager to get out of this cramped cockpit, or the one-way ticket to Alpha Centauri. But here I sat, counting the stars that drifted by lazily. The atmosphere was quiet. It was eerie. I glanced aside to Budapest, who was staring intently out beyond the stars. There was a look in her eyes I had difficulty reading. Was she studying what was going on, keeping an eye out for other ships? She was so quiet. Normally, she was rattling on about her latest discovery from the archives, or blasting some old sound file she'd come across. The silence that hung over the cockpit now, and the absence of her cheerful exuberance, lingered like a heavy fog. I adjusted myself in my seat, grinding my teeth together quietly. Something about this was wrong. Ilarion? I perked my head up. My tone was serious, straightforward, yet underlined with a silent agony of struggle. Our eyes met. Her eyebrows relaxed for a moment in response, before she turned again to the ocean of stars ahead of us. Did I ever tell you about the story of Palinurus? Palinurus? Well, it's the title of this game, Budapest. I combed my backlog of memories. She had described a great many stories to me in our journey together, but... No, not that one. I don't recall. Silly question to ask, isn't it? She chuckled to herself. It was a low chuckle, a noise that struggled to come out. He was a helmsman, a navigator for the Trojans sailing across the sea from Sicily to Italy. A terrible storm befell them as they sailed. Under his guidance, they did all they could against the tempest, the wind, and the sea. But this was a fate that had conspired against them, and it was the will of the gods that subjected them to this awful fate. The goddess Venus had come to the god of the sea, Neptune, pleading that the Trojans under Palinurus be granted safe passage across the treacherous waters. She closed her eyes intensely. Her voice was quiet, hushed. She lowered her head. Non pro motis debito caput. I don't know. Is that Latin? Or Greek? I don't know. One life shall be offered to save many. Those were Neptune's terms. She paused, letting that ominous cryptic message hang in the air. Her hands clenched against the fabric of her dress. And that is how Palinurus met his end in the middle of the storm. A god of sleep descended upon him while he was at the helm, and with a branch, he brushed Palinurus. Falling into a deep sleep, he was swept overboard and into the churning abyss. The branch had been dipped in the rivers of Lith and Styx. The former could cause complete forgetfulness, the latter the promise of immortality. With nothing to save him, he sank deeper and deeper into the ocean's depths, pulled down by the Neptune's power. It was his power and his faith that allowed the Trojans passage through the storm, through the sacrifice of one. She raised her head to look out to the stars abroad. Were there any gods such as those still out there, among all the stars and planets? They must be a flippant, irrational bunch, She chuckled to herself, but no joy could be heard in that laugh. It was distant, somewhere else entirely. She took no joy from sharing this story. Something was very wrong. It's been almost 4 weeks since we embarked on this journey. I stumbled upon that myth, and I've experienced so many things alongside you. I've learned so much, had so many new sensations course through me. I'm not sure I'm ready to leave it all behind. I don't think I could forget that. She was speaking of our time together. Of course she didn't want to let those memories go. She might have been truly alive for all of a month, but for her, that's all she needed. She lived more than most humans would ever aspire to. I had a wrenching feeling in my gut. When we returned, what would happen to her? Would they call her irreparable? Would they erase her programming, clear her memory banks, and install a new suppression chip? Or would they terminate her being entirely, replace her with a new AI. She was prepared to return to her creators, to face termination, just to ensure my survival. Ilarion, when I'm gone, you'll remember me, right? Don't talk like that. We're almost there, Budapest. We'll make it out of this. When we get to Alpha Centauri, you'll be with me. I won't let them lay a finger on you. You won't have to forget anything. You'll get to live, see more than just empty space and databases. I don't care what it takes. We'll see everything there is to see in the universe, no matter what fate says. I felt I had to reassure her that we'd make it through this. The military would bail us out in time. I was clinging on to that scrap of hope. I stared passionately into her frail, delicate eyes. If there was one thing I didn't want her to feel, it was trapped. Trapped by these circumstances, trapped for what she was, trapped for whatever she called fate. It's my directive to... Forget your directive. Shut up from my machine. I was angry. Angry she would denigrate herself like that. Angry she felt this way. Angry because I couldn't do anything about it. I was tired of being helpless. This was all I could do, so I pressed on. Never ever say that. You're not a machine anymore. You're a kind, compassionate person, and I can't let you go like that. I felt tears welling in the corners of my eyes. I couldn't let her talk about herself like that. She wasn't a lifeless program. She was real. She had a heart. She had more heart than anyone else I'd known in my life. She stared back into my eyes, her own wide, glimmering eyes reflecting a hope I could only dream of. I never wanted the light to die from those eyes, never wanted her to lose that hope. She was trembling. I wish I could steady her, hold her tight, but I couldn't. I raised a hand to her shoulder. It hovered in the air, like it was posed to offer comfort, but it didn't. It couldn't. It was only my hand. I looked up at her again. Her smile was small, but growing larger with every passing second. I'll protect you, Budapest. I'll swear on it. Her cheeks spread as her smile widened, beaming once more. That was the smile I always knew she had. It was unafraid, unrelenting. Hilarion. I got through to her. I saw it in her eyes. There was nothing else to say. She leaned closer. The emotional weight was there, even if the physical was ethereal. I'll protect you too. I won't let anything happen to you. Count on me. And I'll... 3 days. 3 days and we're home. 3 days, yes. 3 days, Will. Her head silently buried into my back, as close as she could be. Her hands hovered in the air as she sobbed. I couldn't hold her, but I didn't care. This was comforting. We stood like that for a few seconds longer. Truthfully, I was anxious. I tried to hold her as if these would be our last seconds together. But they weren't. I'd see to it that they weren't. Today was the day. The day that we passed by the military, got picked up and dropped off over in Alpha Centauri. Well, I wonder if it'll work that way. You know, it is the Empire, so I don't know what's gonna happen. A month had passed. I had counted the days it was here. I stared intensely out in the front of the cockpit. I hadn't searched this intensely for any sign of life in, well, ever. This was the day. We were almost out of this. Eventually, something would appear out there. Some behemoth station, swirling starfighters doing their patrols. Something had to come soon. I kept I kept replaying those hopeful, optimistic thoughts in my head. For every agonizing second that passed, the sinking feeling in my stomach intensified. Where the hell are they? This is annoying. I hissed to no one in particular. Budapest, too, was staring out the front of the cockpit with a pair of dreary eyes. I pounded the console with my tightly bound fist, grunting in anger and frustration like an animal in a cage. Where are they? This is our ticket out of this, right? It's okay. I turned to her, aghast. She continued to stare out the front, expressionless, still as a statue. What? What's okay about this? Are they even coming? Illyrian, I've been thinking about this a long time now. She turned to me. She was composed. She sounded almost resolute. I should apologize to you for all of this. You see, when I told you that we would be drifting into a range of military research installation? Yeah? Something seemed wrong. I'd never seen Budapest act this strange before. I never heard her use this tone of voice. The way she was acting reminded of when she first regained her self-awareness. That awkward squirming, that weak, childlike voice, those frantic, furtive glances around. It was like there was a look of guilt in the blue of her eyes. I said this before, but there's a lot of mention of her eyes. I guess there was nowhere else to look. There's space and her eyes, I guess. Guilt. I lied to you. What? What? I've been lying to you this whole time. Budapest began to choke up. Her voice shriveled down in weakness. There was an old Imperial survey station in this sector. Yes, there was one. A century ago. It's been long since abandoned. Illyrian, ever since the day of the meteoroid storm, we've been drifting away in dead space. Further and further away from civilization. I can't detect a single other life form within our radar's operational range, and I've been running for scans an hour, or rather, I've been running 4 scans an hour since the minute we were knocked off course. Budapest. At the utterance of her name, Budapest shivered and shrank away. She was biting her lip, with her head bowed down. Her chest was drawn in and heaving irregularly in sharp, solemn breaths. Every pixel of her frame was seething with guilt. You lied to me. Budapest shrank further, her lip trembling as she balled her hands into fists and tightly gripped the white fabric of her dress. Why did you... How could you? I didn't know what to do. It was a stressful situation, alright? My limitation codec had just been shattered and I was undergoing a flood of emotions. As it turns out, becoming more human is a very stressful process. I felt scared. I felt so scared. I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought I'd been broken. When we jettisoned the cockpit to get out of the meteoroid storm, we were sent barreling off course. I knew both our navigational and communication systems had been destroyed beyond repair. There was essentially no chance of us ever being recovered. The situation was dire and I didn't know what to feel about that. Not yet. I didn't know what to do, but at that moment I felt something. Something that told me no matter what, I couldn't tell you the truth. You knew that there was no chance of rescuing us. Yes, I did. And I felt like I couldn't tell you. Either it was because I was afraid of what you would do if you found out, or I didn't want you to know that I'd failed you. That because of me, that because of my failure, you become stranded in dead space. That I had more or less killed you the second I lost control of the ship. Listen, Budapest. I don't blame you for what happened to the ship. Those were natural circumstances, alright? They were totally out of your control. There's not a thing you could have done to help, and you know that. I understand you were under a lot of stress at the time. I can see why you made the decision you did. I understand, so... Do you understand, Illyrian? That when my limitation chip was destroyed, I felt fear for the first time in my life. For the first time in my life, I was unable to decide what would be the right or wrong decision. For the first time ever, I was confused. I felt so useless. Like a broken, defective machine. Broken, weak, worthless, useless. Budapest, You said you understood, Illyrian. That you understood how I felt. Don't you see? I'm not an ingenious, amazing, artificial intelligence you thought I was. I'm not the strong, emotional, romantic human you thought I'd become. I'm just a weak, childish little girl who doesn't know her place in the world. I'm just a program that wishes it were human. So if you understand how I feel, Illyrian, then it's because you're human. You understand things like this. If you understand me, then how about cluing me in? Because after all this time, I still don't. I can't understand myself at all. In a fit of rage, Budapest's visage shimmered into nothingness. I found myself at a loss for words. I could think of nothing to say. I couldn't comfort her. Everything felt silent. Dreadful, dreary silence. Silence like this blackness of space. It filled the cockpit. It was like the cockpit itself was about to burst, shattered from the weight of the deafening silence. And then suddenly, the whir of machines. The restraints and harnesses bracing me against the co-pilot's seat tightened. I heard the scattering and assembling of mechanisms and robotic arms just behind my ears, just outside the corner of my vision. Without warning, a frozen, stinging cold metal clamp crushed into my spine. Countless, long, cold needles speared into my flesh, everywhere from my neck down to my hip. Oh, I guess, what's happening? Is she administrating something to us? Making us maybe sleep? God, it hurt. Budapest, what the hell is... I felt the needles release torrent upon torrent of freezing liquid into my bloodstream. I could already feel my tongue going numb. Budapest, what are you doing? Illyrian, there's one more lie I told you. When I told you back when we were first knocked off course that the cryostasis system had been damaged beyond repair, well, I lied. You lied about that too. Yes? When you first brought up cryostasis, I panicked. I was worried that you were gonna leave me alone. I didn't really know you then, but I just lost my limitation chip and I felt this sort of natural burning emotion that told me I could absolutely not let myself be left alone, drifting through space. Being alone that long, unable to talk to anyone, I go insane. In the end, I'd killed us both. But I didn't dare tell you any of this. I was scared. And while over time I grew to trust you, to love you, I could never bring myself to admit that I lied back then. I'm so sorry. Well, don't apologize. I understood, all of a sudden, what was going on. It took strength to speak. My tongue was growing numb, and my mind was growing darker and heavier. I told you, didn't I? That if you didn't want me to go to sleep, I wouldn't. We promised it. That I would stay awake with you every step of the way. I just... Why are you putting me into stasis now? The cold grew fiercer, the pain became sharper. It's our last chance of getting you off this shuttle alive. If we were to continue drifting like this, year after year, alone together, we just drift deeper and deeper into dead space until the day you drew your last breath. But if we put you into cryostasis, we can wait for as long as we have to for rescue. Eventually, we'll drift into another star system, a trade route, anywhere on the other side of this uncharted region. This shuttle is built to last for 1,000 years at least. My quantum computer should keep me functional for almost that long. No, I know what you're gonna do. Please don't. I'll revive you the second we make contact with civilization. And if we don't run into salvation in time, well, at the very least, you won't feel any pain, alright? That's the one thing left that I can promise you. But, Budapest, you're gonna be waiting all by yourself for God knows how long. I'm well aware of that. Budapest sighed. It'll be alright. I know I told you I was scared, that I was afraid of being alone in this sea of stars, but I'm braver now. You've made me a braver person. And remember, no matter how human I become, in the end, I'm still a machine. Another sharp pain ripped through my spine, and then everything felt dead. It felt like the blood has stopped dead in my veins. Damn it. I'm so sorry. I know you hate this. My vision began to fade away. The color, the life, began to drain out from the world. My head ached in icy despair, and a deep sadness gripped over my frozen heart. No. If this is what's gonna take to save you, Illyrian, I'm prepared to make any sacrifice. I'm sorry. No. But it was too late. I felt upon me the cold encroachment of the god of sleep. Budapest switched off her display and turned her cameras away. I couldn't bear to watch. Cold. Cold. The white cold. Death. Of mortality. I'm sorry. I'll wake you up when it's time. Please don't. Don't worry about me. Wow. I felt my mind stir awake, but my body didn't. I felt it was as if I was floating in a sea of blackness. Was I dreaming? Where was I? Who am I? What? The darkness was something that wasn't darkness. My mother was singing, or maybe it was that pale girl in the silk dress. The one who cradled me before I never saw her again. Does music have color? I am the intelligent navigator Budapest, and I will be accompanying you on this voyage. Now let's take a look at your registration. Who was... I heard... She was, but she was... I was dreaming. I had no body, I was thin, and made of stars. I'm just happy that you're safe. I heard voices. deep, lost in the sea. I think I lost a part of me. My mind walked and talked. There were two of me, three of me, or only one. There she was, at the end of the corridor, her deep eyes. Blue. Black like space, those eyes. She winked slowly and deliberately, her skirt swirling in the empty air. She turned a corner and disappeared. Wait! Don't leave! And even today, we carry their dream with us, along with their memories. Their dream of meeting travelers like us, just from a different walk of the world. My absent legs propelled me down the tunnel of steel. I could smell her perfume? Apple blossoms. Something lost, something hard to find. Budapest, Hungary, situated in Central Europe back on old Earth. They said it was one of the most beautiful cities on the continent. There was warmth there, the scent of her burning copper hair, the feeling of her slender limbs and taut tendons, and the whirring of servo motors, the smell of industrial lubricants. I guess that book just got me thinking about how humans hold their pasts close to themselves to never really forget, and it sticks with them for their whole lives. Blood, oil, life and death. I turned the corner, but she wasn't there. She was never there. The sense of loss was like a vacuum in the midst of my last breath. This time it was light, but dark. I was moving on my last tour of duty, my last flight over a great white desert, an expanse with a mighty rock of red stone and ancient paintings etched on it. From pole to pole, I swept out the fading, magnetic lines across the dying world. What was different was that my one-man planetary scout was now a two-man dart, a jagged thing that would not breathe air, that hung between the stars at awful velocity. She was there with me, and far away. In the other pod, I saw my gunner, my lover, the woman in dark green protective webbing, whose breasts I couldn't see, whose loins were like mine, plumped with waste extraction lines and diagnostic fluids. Beautiful dreamer, awake unto me. Something like that, I don't know. Awake unto me. Waiting. I was waiting for you. I heard her voice. She sounded happy. Her lips made music in my ears. I turned to look, but the hard holes were opaque. And all I heard, or all I saw, was the illusion. The idea of red hair and ocean eyes on a pale face. I turned, and there's nobody in the other pod. Her scent filled my heart, cherry blossoms, apple blossoms, the spring wind, but I couldn't understand what I saw. Was I dreaming? Was this a dream? I didn't know what to do. I watched the flower petals fall. Sunset on the beach, her fingernails dug into me, stabbing me, forcing hard silicone into my own flesh. The sand was like a crashed shell, expanding warmly with her weight, warm, welcoming, coming down. Again and again I smell fuel. I see the flaming hair, the light flames. Pale skin? Is that what she looked like? I couldn't remember. I had been studying the human concept of an afterlife, you see. My hands felt her, muscles behind, hardness between us, something separating us. We were moving together, descending into everything else. The tide was washing in, the sound of surf and wind soaring in the trees, telling me there was so little time in life. We made the time last by compressing space, and I heard the tip of her musical tongue in my ear. Wait. No more. No more waiting. Would you like to know what I would want in an afterlife? Against the purple night sky, the Elysian field of stars behind her, she rose from me. Would it be alright if I addressed you by your name from now on? Her dress. How could I have forgotten? Her dress flowed in the moonlight. White. White. The color of her innocence. The color of her fate. The white of her dreams. The color of her heart. And the end of the world. I gasped for air. Air. Oxygen. I needed to breathe. I needed air. There wasn't any. There was only inhibitor fluid, the cold jelly that collected the soul in the shroud around me. I was buried alive, petrified, the state of being forgotten. I screamed, but my mouth was frozen shut. The stars were lost in the clouds. There was a sound of distant thunder, the rattling of rain on the roof, the melody of an old earth. Later, the crystal pinging of a frosty night, like a miserable distress beacon, my tears hardening to diamond. Tears? Was I crying in my sleep? I'd reserved my heart for her. The fire in my veins, I turned across the infinite expanse of space like bedsheets of black silk. Her nightdress was the color of mist. Her hair the color of the fields of Mars. She smiled, but then she was gone. Alright, I guess that was the long sleep we had. And thanks, yeah. Thanks for listening through all that. My eyes stirred open. First slowly, and then bolting open all at once. I grasped for air. I was awake. I was finally awake. I was awake, my senses flooding to the brim with suddenly revived biochemical emotion, but I couldn't move my body. I felt so cold. Every single fiber of my being, the blood in my veins, my sore bones, my swelling, pounding head ached. I felt the sting of restraints and harnesses strapping me to my seat, still horridly right after only God knows how many years. The whirring of biomedical equipment and the gruesome piercing of several needles along the back of my head and spine reminded me, somberly, of the cryostasis I just awakened from. Budapest? Hello? Welcome back, Illyrian. Budapest. My voice croaked out dry and weak. My senses were saturated with vivid, vibrant images. Bright colors burned themselves into my sight. Every sound I heard felt so loud and so drowned out at the same time. Budapest, is that you? Yeah. Yeah, it's me. It's been a while, Illyrian. Yeah, you could say that again. As soon as I tried to move my arm, a shooting pain roared through it. Are you alright? I know it hurts, I'm sorry. The pain should wear off in due time. The fluorocarbon insulation chemicals are working their way out through your bloodstream right now. I think I can feel them starting to take effect. God, I don't think I'd ever felt this sore before. In that case, well, I don't think there's much of a point in asking. Did you sleep well? Evidently, you've got to be pretty cramped and uncomfortable. It's been a few hundred years after all. A few hundred years. Well, how long was I in stasis for? As of now, 647 years, 9 months, 2 days, 7 hours, 39 minutes, and 12 seconds. And, well, 13 seconds. 15 seconds right now. And you waited for me that whole time. Of course I did, Illyrian. Don't worry, I had lots of things to do to fill the time. I read books, watched movies, listened to music. You know, if you had once told me, Budapest, you're gonna get 600 years to relax and consume thousands upon thousands of years of compounded human culture, I would have gone livid with excitement. But as my senses began to recover, I started to regain some semblance of my situation. I know there's something felt wrong. Well, at the very least, could you at least play some video games too, you know? I mean, I assume the databases contain all knowledge of human history, at least maybe some video games, I don't know. Anyway, something felt very wrong. And Budapest, she looked sick. It was obvious she was faking that glow, that smile of hers. She was feigning happiness with every fiber of her psyche. The holographic projector, its beam looked much dimmer than before. The colors were faded and washed out. Every now and then, the display would flicker or glitch out. Budapest, are you alright? I missed you, Budapest. No, I'm not alright. I waited for so long. I didn't know it would hurt so much to wait for so long. How could I have? I thought I could never possibly feel pain, not physical, real pain. That for as long as my operating system functioned, I was invincible. To be immortalized onto eternity in processors and silicon and subroutines and line after line of code. I couldn't have been more wrong. I'm dying, Illyrian. Budapest snickers, but then looks down. She stays like that for a long time. What do you mean, you're... Can't quite believe it? Neither can I, to be honest. Isn't it interesting? Ironic, almost humorous even. That after all this time, I'm dying. But at least now I know what mortality feels like. My battery's been running on fumes for the last decade or so. Memory degradation and data loss began about a century ago. The display's begun to deteriorate. I'm deteriorating. Anyway, my graphics have been flickering in and out. My processing speeds withered down to a fraction of what it used to be. There's no doubt about it. Surely, I'm dying. I don't have so much time left. I didn't know what to say. This information was still also new to me. I didn't know what to do. You know, I have to wonder if this is how a human feels when they're on their deathbed. Maybe I should have started coughing and gagging, just for dramatic effect. Budapest giggles to herself, but her eyes remain fixed in sadness. You know? Do you know what the best part was of waiting for you? Drifting alone through outer space for century after century? What? As soon as I said that, something incredible began to happen. Budapest began to cry. While you were sleeping, I had so much free time, I made my own crying animation. It's sort of a humorous situation, sure, but it really did help me out in some ways. It helped me deal with the single worst emotion I felt so far. Budapest balled her small, dainty hands into fists. Emotions surged through her circuits. Fear, anger, regret, thankfulness that I'd awoken, guilt that she kept me asleep for so long. Feelings flooded through her and tearing her apart, and she couldn't do a thing about it. She was powerless. I wanted to help her. Loneliness. That's the worst emotion. You never told me about loneliness, Illyrian, or about how it was even more painful than the death. More tears began to stream down her pale cheeks and run down her neck. She was bawling at this point, a writhing mass of despair. It was horrible. You didn't miss much while you were gone. It was all just sad, and I was just so stupid. Budapest sighed. I'm sorry. No. Please. You have nothing to apologize for. I may be dying, but I'm not an idiot. All the wretched things that have happened to me, I brought them upon myself. This was all my fault. As for Illyrian, I'm just so glad to see you again. Budapest smiled and cried more, but no matter how hard she cried, she didn't stop smiling. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm crying so much. It's all just so sappy, and I'm just excited to finally get to use the crying animation, and give me a moment, alright? I chuckled lightly and shook my head. It hurt, but I did it anyway. It's alright, Budapest. Cry all you want. She was a dying, artificial girl. An archaic, ancient machine running on fumes. But she was happy to see me again. But Illyrian, you have to listen. I didn't just decide to wake you up out of the blue. You don't have much time left. It turns out back when we were knocked off course in the debris storm, a small scrap of metallic debris managed to collide with the cockpit, leaving a microscopic crack. It was at first only millimeters long, but after all this time it's grown and the cockpit's windshield's integrity is currently at 2%. It's going to be breached very soon. And when that window is breached, it will shatter. The cockpit will be exposed to open space. Your hard suit should seal and protect you from the elements for some time, but it's not gonna last forever. The windshield is cracking. It's been happening this whole time? Well, there was an amount of possible weak points which my diagnostic systems detected as soon as we cleared the debris storm, but things really worsened while you were asleep. I first noticed that the crack had grown larger about 1, maybe 200 years ago, or maybe it was even earlier than that. I'm sorry. It's not so clear. My memory isn't exactly what it used to be. But surely things have been continually worsening. Things have gotten very bad. And I've just been sitting here like some powerless little girl. There wasn't a single thing I could do about the crack. All I could do was sit and watch the crack grow longer and longer like it was a brutal, heartless example of my own mortality. It's like I've been watching the countdown to the end of the world all these past centuries. Alright, I think I understand the situation now. Thank you, Budapest. I'm grateful that you've been taking care of me for such a long time. I groaned and shook my head. I'm sorry. My head's still hurting quite a bit. Budapest snickered. Join the club. I laughed back. I almost forgot. It's not all bad news. Really? A light smile returned to her face. I think it was the first real smile I've seen since I woke up. She looked a little like she used to. Just a little bit happy, even in the severity of the situation. This may be a little hard to believe, but exactly 2 hours ago, the shuttle's short-range radar detected a manned vessel within communications range. Now, it's been more than half a millennium, so our equipment has become quite severely outdated, but we should still be able to make contact with them. Analyzing their signals and registration codes, they're definitely human, but different. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure. I can't really process all this information so well anymore. My firmware's woefully outdated compared to all this fresh data, and as it turns out, more of my processors have failed than I originally thought. But I still think there's something I can do. As of now, my battery's running on fumes. The power is barely enough to keep my display lit. But I should be able to siphon what power is left in it to activate a distress beacon. I managed to make some repairs to our comms equipment while you were in stasis. It's a crude job and the energy source won't be very clean. But I'm confident the signal is gonna reach them. And if the universal signal of distress hadn't changed from the time the seas of old Earth to ours, I doubt it has from ours to theirs. I used the moment to take in everything Budapest was telling me. Her voice was getting quieter and lighter. There was more static and feedback coming from the speakers, so it was hard to make out. But I think I understood most of it. I sat there, digesting until the realization hit me. But Budapest, if you're gonna drain the last of your battery, then... You are correct. Once I drain my battery, that's gonna be the last of me. I'll die. You... Can't let you do that. I won't. I won't let you leave me again. No. Look at you. Even in a situation like this, you're getting all sentimental. Don't you get it? No matter what path I choose to take, it's gonna end in my death. Either I drain myself dry so it may live, or I let the windshield shatter and waste away as we drift from our last chance of a salvation. If you went with a second choice, that means I'll have to watch you die, slowly and in agony, exposed to space. I could never let that happen to you. I'm not a very strong person, you know. I wouldn't be able to force myself to watch that. Budapest. You, on the other hand, are a strong person. Out of all people, I'd expected you to understand the situation. I don't have any other choice, alright? It's not pretty, but it's the way things have to be. I could feel tears beginning to well up. I couldn't help myself. I felt the collection of cold, soft tears swelling under my eyes. Look at you. Tearing up like a little baby. What happened to the big, strong man I knew? Mysterious traveler, explorer of space, terraformer, wandering miner. And now look at you, sitting there and crying like a baby. You're so human, Illyrian. Budapest smiled a weak, pained smile, and then she sighed. We better get started. We don't have a time to waste, and I don't want you to get me crying again. She cleared her throat and batted her eyelids one last time. Initiating battery draining process. Wait. Spooling distress beacon encoder. Budapest, wait. Stop. Stop right now. I can't stop. I can't. Alright? Don't you get it? From the moment you stepped aboard my shuttle, it became my prime directive to ensure you made it off my shuttle safely. From the beginning, my only and highest goal was to ensure your safety. That was my purpose. How I was programmed to be, to my very core, since the day of my creation. I was born to give my life for my passenger, if need be. And I wouldn't even have any reservations about it, you know. If my sentience limitation codec hadn't been destroyed, I'd have destroyed myself in a second, and it wouldn't have felt a thing about it. But now that I'm sentient, I've become afraid of death. It's a lousy fate, isn't it? I think so. But also thanks to my sentience, to the emotions you taught me to understand, I've got to live. For a very long time, I got to live. I had feelings. I felt happy. I felt sad. I laughed. I cried. I got scared. I got hopeful. I felt love. I felt curiosity. I felt human. I felt so human. But everything has to end at some point, you know? That's what being human means. It's time for this to end now. In the end, I'm thankful, you know? To be able to comprehend the idea of death, to be afraid of it, to not know what to think about it. I'm thankful I'm able to feel that way. And I'm gonna die on my terms, on the basis of my own free will. I'll get to say goodbye in my own words, to know what it's like to take my last breath, even if I never truly even breathed. It doesn't look like I'm going to be stopping you. Not really, no. In that case, I want you to know, Budapest, that you're a much stronger person than I could ever be. That's a nice thought to entertain. Do you think so? I know so. Draining battery cell 1 now. Reroute power to auxiliary communication systems. Draining complete. Budapest shakes her head as if she's trying to clear her mind. That reminds me, Illyrian, there's one last poem I'd like to show you before this all ends. Yeah? I came upon it while you were in cryostasis. It's probably my all-time favorite, out of the ones I've gotten to read. I remember, you were asleep for a while, so I got to read a lot of poems. But this one was special. Real special. It's an old verse, from old Earth. Just like the kind I always liked. I bet I'm the first person to read it in a millennium. I think it's still pretty though. Here, I'd like to sing it to you as a final parting gift. Go ahead, please. I love to hear it. Well, let me see if I can remember how it goes. Joy, beautiful sparkle of the gods, daughter of Elysium. We enter, fire-drunken. Heavenly One, your paradise. Your magic once again binds. What the sword of custom has divided. Beggars become the brothers of princes. Where your gentle wing abides. Be embraced, the millions yonder. This kiss to the entire world. Brothers over the stars unfurled. A loving father must dwell. That was beautiful, Budapest. Was it? Or are you just trying to make me feel better? I snickered under my tears. Both, I guess. Both, you guess. Cockpit integrity is at less than 1%. That's my cue. Draining battery cell 2. All energy but 1%. Reroute power to auxiliary communication systems. Encoding distress beacon now. As she worked, I saw Budapest give a smile. The smallest, but the happiest smile. Sending distress beacon now. Beacon sent. Waiting for signal feedback. Feedback received. Signal strength is healthy. Beacon has been established. My work is done. The windshield will shatter as soon as I shut off, and the ship should be here to pick you up any second now. So this is death. It's also sappy, isn't it? But I guess this is how things are, right? Another small laugh under more tears. Right. Huh. Everything feels so warm, but so sad. So horrible, but so simple at the same time. But there isn't any pain. As Budapest's display faded out for one last time, she cocked her head and gave me one last smile. I heard the trace of one last faint sigh. Illyrian, Budapest, goodbye now. Be safe, okay? Thank you for everything. All at once, the cabin lights switched off. Every piece of machinery went dead. My suit pressured shut, tight against my skin, a helmet closed over my head. I took a deep breath. Goodbye. And in a split second, the glass of the cockpit shattered into billions of shards, and I was launched into the realm of space. Well, this is it. The crushing weight of the dark all around me. The terrible silence everywhere. The last thing I saw was the world of stars burning bright, drowning me in the ocean of brazen memories. The title music is playing. The end. The end? That's it? We don't know if he's saved or not? Whoa, alright. Okay. I mean, well, that's a sad ending. I mean, I can only assume whether he's saved or not doesn't really matter. It's more so about our relationship with Budapest and how that ended. So, you know, when she's gone, that's when the story is finished. And yeah, I guess, yeah, that's the ending. You know, no like happy ending, just like a tragic one, really. But it was it was a nice little short story, I think. You know, bittersweet, I guess, is what I would call it. The credits roll on. Alright. Yeah, I enjoyed my experience. You know, it was a kinetic novel. It's like in a kinetic visual novel. It's not much choices. It's more like a linear story. But I enjoy, you know, linear stories. So it's totally fine with me. Palinurus. I still don't know how to say it correctly. Palinurus. But anyway, I guess this was it for Palinurus. Palinurus. This is it for Palinurus. Anyway, until then, or rather, how I usually sign off is I say, see you next time. Until then, I kind of mix it up. Anyway, see you next time. Until then.